I'm so fortunate today to have with me Susie Cole, or more formally, I should call her Susannah Cole. So Susannah and I have known one another for years. You're going to find out in this that we've got, quite a good relationship, which I think is lovely to have a conversation with someone that you have a good relationship for. It makes it work well. But she is a font of knowledge. And I think what will be really nice in this, as you can hear why my successful alarm is going off at 3:33, looking at why we've both been successful, looking at the differences and the similarities, and looking at how we converge and how we diverge, and seeing that what looks like on the surface to be something very similar. We both source properties, we both have property training companies, we've both been single mothers, all of that sort of stuff. But your background and your skills and your strengths and your approaches and what you want to get out of it, your likes and your dislikes, influence and shape a business. And creating something that works for you, that generates that outcome, is going to be crucial. So listen in to our conversation and you're going to pick up tips for yourself on how you can grow your property portfolio and maybe even a wider property business. Hello and welcome. My name is Vicky Washea, as you know, host of A Wealthy Life podcast. And I am very lucky to have with me today the wonderful Susannah Cole. Can we call you Susie in public? I know I call you Susie.
Yes, that would be lovely.
But
Susie,
officially the Susannah Cole. And Susannah's amazing. So, like me, you might have noticed, women in property, a rarity. This specific woman in property started in 2009 and has sourced deals to the value of 45 million. Now, that's not to be sneezed at, so we're talking a good 15-ish, 16-ish years in the business. 45 million pounds worth of property has gone through, let's say, her system, her fingers. So she is very definitely someone to listen to. So I'm going to record a number of interviews with Susie. So let's get into it now.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. And it's so nice to be with you and with your community. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Right, let's get going. So welcome, Susie. Thank you very much again for giving up your time to be with me. So we've been having a chat. Of course, we're going to have a chat before we even start this.
Of course.
We've been chatting away for hours, and now we've worked out what we're going to share with everybody else. And one of the many things that we're going to share is this idea of, I suppose, what is the point of the business? What is the nature of the business that you're getting into? So this is whether you're going to invest in property and make a property business, or a training business, or like us, start with investing for ourselves, then invest for others, and then move it on into teaching. Doesn't really matter what of those natures it is. What type of business is it? Are you looking to build an empire, or are you looking to build a lifestyle? And I know that we've sort of done the analysis of this, but I think we're going to need to go back over that so everybody catches back up with us and where we're at the moment. What would your definitions of empire versus lifestyle business be?
Well, I think an empire is when you see somebody going from wherever they start to a really large business, obviously a scaled business, but a very significant business, which if you look at Daniel Priestley, he talks about lifestyle and kind of empire businesses with the gap in the middle. So a lifestyle business would be you'd be employing under 12 people. An empire, you're employing over 50. And the gap in the middle is the desert, according to, I mean, I quite like his books. I think it's very good. So according, it's a tough place to be. And I know I've been in that middle bit. So the empire part is really when now you might not be a FTSE 100, but you've got a senior manager for each of your functions. So you may be the chairman stroke woman or the chief exec, but you will have an operations director, a finance director, a marketing or marketing and sales director. These days, you'll probably have a tech director as well. So that is where you have got an enormously professional business and you've grown very, very large. And it may be that the majority of the other parts of the components of the business may be outsourced. So your marketing stroke sales may be bringing in outsourced contractors, and your operations, who's probably your construction director, will be bringing in outsourced contractors. You may not be employing all of those builders yourself, that your business is large enough to sustain real professional management teams, I think. And so it's huge
Yeah.
because those are big salaries and those are big functions. So we're talking huge versus the lifestyle, let's go and enjoy the sea, and the business absolutely works for me, not I work for the business.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that line there, the business works for me, I don't work for the business, I think is a good way to describe a lifestyle business. I think from my set of glasses of looking at property, I would say that a lifestyle business in the property world specifically is probably someone with sub 5 employees, and that includes, or let's say functions, and that includes the outsourced accountant stroke bookkeeper, the outsourced person who does whatever your marketing is or your VA. And then the rest of the people around the outside are probably companies that you tap into. So you've got a solicitor, but they're not part of your team. They are solicitors in their own right, and your broker in its own right, and your letting agent, your estate agent teams. And your contractors are probably not people that rely on you 100% of the time. I think what's interesting in this, and this is what then sparked our interest in this conversation, is for me, the empire I see. So that the empire, I don't even consider them empire builders, because the ones that you describe at plus 50, I'm thinking like, your Taylor Woodrow, your big builder chappies out there that are so corporate. They're not faces. They're certainly not on Facebook, all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
But there is this sort of, and this is going to sound rude, and I don't mean it to sound rude, but I can't think of another word for it in a moment. But like,
Chest bumping? Chest
well,
bump?
yeah. But I was going to go wannabe empire builders. So the people
Yes.
who are on their way to being, or maybe want to be like Taylor Woodrow's and be that big, and let's put it the other way around. The people are on their way to wanting to be an empire of more than 50 employees.
Yep.
But what they're driven by is the money. And the way you described an empire is actually the way I would describe a very successful business. And
Yes.
I think that we can use the word empire in two different ways. So empire, as you described it, for me, is the word successful business. And you
Correct.
talked about business functions. And until you actually said the word contractors, I was going with, well, those are all the functions of a regular business. We could go to Marks and Spencer's, to BP, to
Yep.
Apple, to Google, and they would all have recognizable, in the old days, business departments with a head of department and a number of staff with a clearly defined business objective. So not only do we know what that group of people were meant to be doing, but the output from that group of people, how that supported the whole. So it justified their existence within the structure. What you get with, I think, property empire builders is, and then this is where we're going to connect back to your chest pumping, is often someone maybe coming at it with ego, coming at it very clearly on social media, going very big, very fast. Now, the very big doesn't correlate to the number of staff. The very big correlates to the number of deals or the money that they're borrowing, which is another thing. And I don't feel that those sorts of empires are always sustainable, because they haven't put in those foundations. And so that was quite interesting to hear your definition. Yeah.
Exactly right. Because we've seen, so my starting was very early on in my career. There was a really he was a super guy who took me aside and said, now I'm going to spend 2 hours with you. It was incredibly kind of him. I have lost everything. I'm 59. I've lost my second marriage, my stepchildren, I've lost everything. And I had 280 houses. And I do not, and he was incredibly kind, clearly a competent in many, many ways human being. And he said, this is what I do not want you to do. And so that always guided me as to, I don't want to overtrade as an empire builder, because you and I probably know an awful lot of people in the property industry who have quietly, I was sharing, and obviously I won't name the person, a super guy who's lost 160 houses in his own home, is restarting, and highly talented, but made some mistakes. And so I had that advice from this chap who how thoughtful of him to say, look, make a cup of tea. I'm going to talk you through this. So it wasn't a therapy session for him. It was a kindness to pass on. And then on the other side of it, I actually met what we might call the professional business at one of my architects. Here we are, ladies. One of my architects' cocktail parties. I was the only woman. There was
Mhm.
there were 50, really fairly large contractors, and there was one lady, me. I mean, if you're looking for a fella, you're in the right
Yeah,
place.
you
But
were in the
I
right
was there
place.
for professional reasons. And there was the chief exec of a very, very large construction firm that turned over 100 million a year. And they'd been going for 100 years. And, he was all bonhomie and jolly and all the rest of it. But we got down to talking business, and it was, I'm just this little person at the beginning of my journey. I think I was invited for novelty value at the time. And he said something that also made it stick. He said, I used to fight with my, he said, I still do fight with my finance director. So you notice the functionary there.
Mhm.
But my finance director insists that we keep a year's worth of trading money, which for us is 100 million, in the bank at all times. And on the good years, I fight so hard with them to release that money. But then when we hit a year like 2008, major recession, I kind of quietly go and thank him. And so I had these two much larger businesses than me when I was starting in my head, the kind of good angel and the sadly the one that fell off the perch angel. And I found that really interesting. So they had been in business for 100 years because they had not overtraded. And what
Yes.
we find in our industry, which is a smaller, more personable industry, is the people who try and build empires, they overtrade.
Yes.
They don't have a finance director who refuses to let them have the money because it's their money, or they've borrowed the money. And therefore they don't have clear set, non-movable, functioning rules in place. So
Yes.
I think that many of the empire builders that you and I have seen go bust over the years have been in between that middle bit that Daniel
Yeah.
Priestley describes. They've gone past the lifestyle. They're still trying to run it almost on lifestyle bases, but they've not yet got big enough to employ the functionaries who are going to stamp the foot and say no. And you're like, oh, damn, why did I employ you? But, I respect like this chap, you could tell. I'm sure some of those discussions when he was saying, can we please release some of that 100 million quid because I could work with it? I can't imagine they were very calm discussions, or they didn't have some heft to them.
Yes.
You got to have a finance director who's able to withstand the heft. And the
Yes.
problem is that if we are going to move from beginning to lifestyle past to empire, and we're going to go through that desert, unless we adapt and change, we are at major risk of overtrading. I mean, let's be honest. Did you ever overtrade? Because I know I did in the early days. There was definitely. Oh, Vicky's shaking her head. Oh,
No.
I did slightly. I had
But
two
I've never borrowed money. I've never borrowed money from
Ah,
a stranger.
oh, I've borrowed millions.
No. See,
Ha
and
ha.
that's what I wanted to get to. I want to
Yes.
hold this. I really
Yeah.
want to get into that because that's a very difference between us. And we
Yes.
spoke about how I very definitely am lifestyle. I'm very much all about the holidays and the tomatoes and for everything else
Yes.
in around the outside. And
And
I
the
know,
diving.
yeah, and I know that you enjoy your holidays and your lifestyle.
Yes.
But we also spoke about how you're, if you like, another variation on lifestyle in that you
Yes.
also wanted to scale fast. So
Yes.
we're going to pick that piece up in a minute.
Okay.
But what I just want to do is talk about this. We're using this word empire again, and there's all these different sorts. Is what I was looking at, because strangely enough, we're recording this, and this is going to come out somewhere at the end of 24, early 25. But round about episode early 30s, I think it is 130, somewhere around there. I talk about failure and what goes wrong, and this idea that people build without the foundation. So they either
Yes.
don't have the knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And they do one deal, and then all of a sudden they're a mentor on Facebook, or
Oh,
or they can source deals on Facebook, and they've only ever done one deal and they've got no experience. Or somebody I read the other day who's had 2 years, so only started post-COVID, so has got no real experience of the ups and downs of the market. I don't know how many deals they've done, but they're now putting themselves out there sourcing deals for others. And I know there are people on the internet that talk about how you can become sourcing compliant. So you might have ticked all the sourcing compliance box, you might have all the insurance, you might be members of all the right people, but if you don't have that level of experience to
Yes.
do the ebb and flow, you even mentioned the company with, 100 million in the bank, that when, well, and I don't know how long it'll be before we hit it 2008 style again, but when there is that level of crash, or
Yep.
even as significant as it was, the blip of COVID, whatever it is, these ups and downs, now we've got the Labour Party, etc., etc. If you don't understand how to run that, and that's going to be another topic for us, isn't it? We're talking about predicting the future, so we're going to talk
Yes.
about that. But if you don't have in place the experience to handle that, how do you ever get through that? And on the other side, you might have the experience, as in you've been through it before, but for whatever reason you didn't learn, which would be an odd thing to do, and you haven't put in place systems
But
or team
human.
members. Yeah, clearly. But also some people get distracted, don't they? They go, I think some people don't reflect. And I know I
Yes.
am very reflective, and I don't know how you are, but when I've gone through something and I come out the other end, even a straightforward purchase, I go, how can I do that better next time?
Yes.
What did I not like about that? And then I make an adjustment.
Yes. So even on joint ventures, every single joint venture afterwards, I sit down and go, what did we do well? What did we do badly? How can we do better next time? Often having a conversation with the investor, when the investor was, had some nous about them. When we used to do live training days, which I'm very digital these days, my team and I used to sit down the following day and go, what went well, what went badly, pre, during, and post, and how can we do better next time? So that's that reflective plan, do, review, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
totally.
And I sit down quarterly with my accountants. Where are we at? What's going well? What's not going so well? How do we want to adjust? I mean, I don't always take all of his advice, and I'm sure I drive Simon bananas at times. And I sit down weekly with my bookkeeper, and she's also got a very good head on it. So yes, I agree. Reflection, is super important. Okay, so where do you want to start?
Where shall we start? So what about well, why don't we start with how we started, to look at how we've made our businesses? And we've
Okay.
already hinted at that. So if I just do my bit, because I know my bit, and then you can do how yours is different to my bit. So I started off with
What year did you start?
I started in 2004.
There you are.
So started by going to a talk with my sister, which was about pensions, and I didn't have a pension because 2004, I'm 3 years past being a university lecturer, and I think I'm working on most of my life I worked on project-based funding, so if there was government funding in education and I had a job, and then we'd have to fight for the next piece of education funding, and off we go again. So I started off in 2004. We saw this thing about you can put properties into your pension, and I was thinking, oh, what a shame I haven't got a pension. Anyway, because I was curious, and I'd always loved the idea of property.
Yeah.
And this came from when my grandma and grandfather died. We had a big house on a big plot of land, and my dad was talking about building on the side and putting planning in. And then I had all these thoughts and all these ideas, but I didn't have the language. And I think I've spoken about this before, when if you like, from sort of an NLP perspective or anything like that, there's this awareness in my peripheral vision that property is a good idea, but I can't ask questions because I don't have the words. I don't know the language. I didn't know the word property investment. I know that sounds a really strange thing to do, but if you're poodling around in your own little world down here, you might not come across that word, property investment. I think you'd be a very strange person in the UK if you'd never heard the word property investment nowadays, right? But I'm talking, yeah, 40 plus years ago. Okay, so a lifetime ago, pre the internet. That's how old this is. Yeah, then I didn't have that language, and also not the internet to go and even explore. And I mean, blinking things like podcasts, none of that was going on. We had books, and when the books were printed, all the data in the books was out of date type of stuff. And so I basically could have taken my grandparents' home and turned it in, it's either split it into 4 2-bed flats or turned it into an HMO, and then we could have had 3 houses built on the land either side. In the end, when you go back to that address, and I've driven past, you can see these houses have been built. Someone's done that. So I knew property was a good idea. So we went and spoke to the bloke in the room, and he started talking about property. And in the end, again, didn't have the language for it, but he was a property sourcer. So he then agreed for a fee to find us a property and do it up, and we would pay the builders. And obviously now I know that he got a cut on that as well. And then we would rent the properties out. And that's how it started in 2004. No education, no idea other than instinct. When he sent the numbers through, I think I probably didn't even know about return on investment, net profit. I was just looking at what he told me, which was gross, the yield, that the yield was good. But I mean, I don't know what yield really tells me. Net profit says, if I put my money in this house or I put my money in that building society, this is the return I would get, and I can compare it. I've never really understood what purpose a raw gross figure without counting the expenses does for you. And that was it. We started. So we bought one. My sister and I went to my dad and asked to borrow the money, and he lent it to us. And
So you did borrow money, but
but
from
yeah, okay,
family.
but
Yeah.
sort of like, from
Yes.
daddy.
Yes.
It doesn't really count if it's, I don't know about how you were with your dad, but I mean, quite frankly, if I asked my dad for his left arm, I would have got it. I never really considered that as borrowing. So yes, I did borrow money, but never from anyone other than my parents, basically. So borrowed that money from him, and then that was 2004, and it went well. And then I saw stuff. By now I've got a different radar on, so I'm more aware. Still haven't quite got the language, but I know something's going on. I can feel bubbles out here, and I don't understand what the bubbles are. And I started looking, and there was trouble in America.
Yep.
And this is when I started to hear how they did mortgages out there, which were really odd. There were things called ninja mortgages, which is where they would lend money to people who had no income and no jobs. Okay, how were they ever supposed to pay the mortgage back? But it was a gamble by very risk-taking lenders that it didn't really matter whether they could pay the mortgage or not, because when they came to seize the property would be worth more, because property was massively climbing 2004 to 2007. And I thought, okay, well, if they're doing silly stuff like that, what I could do is I can be that silly lender, and I can lend on my own property. So why don't I increase my own mortgages? So we remortgaged the first property Nikki and I had, and we got a second property. We released money from mine and Bob's home, and that was a wonderful thing. Barclays used to give you this mortgage where they would say, oh, how much is the house worth? Let's make the maths nice and say it's worth 200,000. And then you got a capital and repayment, and you pay down. But as you pay down, yes, you've paid down the loan, but what you can also do is still have over here a pot of available borrowing. So what you can do is you can
I
pay.
had that too.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
wasn't that a great idea? I mean, I'm still
Yep.
responsible for all of it. It's still all against my house. Bring that back, lenders. And so basically, I've paid down my mortgage, but I've got this available lending. So I borrowed the available lending, and then I bought my third property. And then that was it. We were off. I went back to my dad for more money, and it just didn't stop from there, really. But that was it. All I've ever done is primarily borrow out of the main residence, because that's the one that's been in the south. That's the one that's had the capital appreciation. Always with a view to, it's my own home, I don't want to risk it. So there's the risk factor coming in, the paying attention. And borrowing money from my parents, there's the risk factor, being careful, because this is with people I love. I'm not going to put them in any danger. And then only going as fast as that would let me. And then of course I got completely sidetracked by 2010, writing the first book, speaking at property events, and then
I remember that.
the
Yeah.
sourcing and everything else. And I always wanted to be the first woman to speak at that property event, and I was the second. And I
Oh,
still, years of attending, and I was still only ever the second, but
who
that's
was the
okay.
first?
The Welsh girl whose name escapes me. She did lease options.
I remember her. I've forgotten her name too. Yes.
Oh, got it. I wonder, can we say
Sure.
Sarah Barrett?
That's right. I remember
Yes.
her. Yes.
Yes. So I think
Yes.
she was
Married
first.
to a rugby player, I believe.
Yes, yes. So there you go. So
Oh,
that
well
was
done.
how I got distracted. And I have now, to this day, never borrowed a non-blood relative's money.
Interesting.
Well, other than Bob's, but I mean, I think that's basically
Yeah.
as good as blood.
Your relative.
Yeah,
Yes.
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 Husband, he counts.
Yes. I remember going as a beginner to the Berkshire Property Meet and seeing you in there as one of the big names.
No.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You
See,
know,
I
that's
never saw you as not a big name. From day
oh,
one, I saw you as a big name. So that's really interesting, isn't it?
I would literally, well, I think that's that imposter syndrome, isn't it? I would go in and go, there's Vicky Boucher. I wonder if I dare go and speak to her.
I
Honestly.
know.
Yeah.
Oh, how
Yeah.
silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it
Isn't that?
funny? It's just how we are as people.
I
You know,
know.
she's really big and she knows a lot, and I kind of starting to know some stuff, but like, oh, you know.
Until we
So
spoke
I
before this, I didn't realize you started after me. I thought you'd started
yes.
the same time as me or before me.
No, I'm half a decade after you. You're way,
Ah,
yeah, way ahead time wise.
oh my
We
God.
we did do slightly different. So there's similarities to our journey, but different, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I
So do
start
your journey.
um um so had little ones for whom I was fully responsible. Therefore, time and money are clashing, aren't they? The whole time you've got to go out and you've got to earn the money for your family,
Yeah.
but you want to be with your family, and it's just that whole kind of uncomfortable heart stretch the whole time because you're not going to put a roof, you're not going to not put a roof over them and buy the school uniforms and all the rest.
Yes.
In order to do that, you need to pay a child
Somebody's got to
maintenance.
give. Yeah.
Yes, and I didn't like
How
the
old
give.
were they?
Oh, well, when I started in property, they were 10 and 12, but I had been solo with them since they were very,
Oh
really
yeah.
quite,
No, no,
age
same as me.
two and above.
Yeah, so
So
we're identical there, but my
yes,
children were 10 years older, and I think that that makes a difference. That
yes,
makes a difference. When you've still got kids in school,
yeah,
whether you're a man or a woman listening to this, there are different priorities on you.
yes.
And would you say your risk attitude was different?
Um, I certainly think my hunger, I did feel slightly back against the wall. My hunger to provide security and safety for them was very, very strong. Because I do feel that when they're quite young, you've got such a strong parental feel to protect your
Yes,
family,
mother
haven't you?
lion.
Yes, yes, yes.
Cross me
I
at your
was
peril.
quite, I was quite, keep these children protected. That
Yes,
I could feel it. It was almost real, you know.
yes.
And I had bought and sold three houses, and it was sort of serendipitous because I bought and sold three family houses, and each time, partly I think my family background, because my mum's always liked houses. So my parents are academics. My dad was a maths professor, which probably explains a bit about me, and my mum was a French teacher. They're both with me. It's brilliant. They're 82 and 80 currently, and we
Wow.
do an annual family holiday. And my dad still outwalks me and outcycles me, and I love it.
Oh, amazing.
So it's really good. But and so my mum had all ran young enterprise within her secondary school, so she's always had a little bit of an eye for business. And I do think, and my dad is a very equal opportunities kind of a guy. He's enormously logical, right on that end, should we just say. So he illogically can't understand why women can't be the same as men. Not the same, but equal,
Yeah.
equal. So I had been brought up in a very equal household where they couldn't understand why that wouldn't be the case. And, when we were little, Dad made us little DIY benches, because his daughters needed hammers and things like that. So he did the DIY. And so I do think that probably helped. But I had then bought and sold three family homes. Each time they doubled. And I do remember my lawyer saying, now you do realize, Susannah, this wasn't anything you did. It's just the market. And he was kind of right. But also I did bring in a lot of design. So there's a little bit of desirability because there's two ways you can flip. You can either flip by bringing in unique one-off design, which makes somebody go, I have to have it because FOMO,
Yeah.
or scale and rinse and repeat, and it's good enough and quality, but there's lots of other ones similar.
Yeah.
And that's what I did and then moved down to Bristol because the kids were older. Thought they're not going to love being in the countryside. We open the door and the kids go out playing, and a bit like Heidi, I'd call them in at tea time thinking, I hope they're okay, with the dog and their group of rumbly tumbly children that all came in to be fed. Just thinking they're teenagers, they're about to be teenagers, they need a city now. And I I had been doing corporate jobs and I'd been enjoying the jobs in some ways, but really not liking the constraint,
Yes.
which probably everybody can relate to. So I'd always been kind of, I'm enjoying the drive within this job, but now you want me to work 60 hours a week and I just want to be with my family. But at the same time, I've got a very responsible job, but I want to be with my family.
Yeah.
Caught into a pine pot, it just didn't fit. So did the same mortgage as you, that drawdown mortgage, took 60 grand out, bought the first investment property, but buying property number 3, it was a joint venture with one of my neighbours. And I had the good fortune in my last job to be marketing director of a major museum in Bristol. And my job before that, I was running KISS, the radio station in Bristol, which was quite good fun because it's a large media outlet. And so I had been given after they gave me the job, they then said, by the way, I know you're in charge of the marketing department for this museum, but also we're going to give you the fundraising department. What? I've got no skills at all. And there was an incredibly talented woman called Vanessa in that department. Incredibly. In fact, I actually asked her to be made director, and she was made director, because no point me pretending it was my work, because it wasn't. She was brilliant. She taught me everything I needed to know about fundraising. So I'd already seen fundraising in a different capacity as a museum, done in a very professional way. I'd been to, I can't remember what they called, the British Institute of Fundraisers. You know, I'd seen it as a profession rather than as a beg. And therefore, I just took all the skills that Vanessa, technically for a while I was her boss until she got made director. And I asked for her to be made director. There's no point me parroting, might as well have her at the table. I took those skills into property. So I was really lucky to be taught that professionally. So I never saw fundraising as anything other than an equal exchange. And that was really helpful. And then I was like, all right, let's go. And I am impatient and I do like to scale. And if something can be done, why don't we do it again? And why don't we make it easier? And why don't we do it again? And why don't we do it 3 times? And, at one point we were buying and selling, flipping 30 houses at the same time, all joint ventures. Because if you can scale something, why not scale?
Yes. You are a machine, I have to say. I think I work hard and then I listen to what you do and I go, oh my God, I may as well why don't I just retire? Because I'm really doing absolutely nothing here. I thought I'd done a lot in 2008 to 2010. I bought on average 1 to 2 properties a month.
Oh, that's strong. That's good.
Yeah. But that was just me and, like the outsourced team of solicitors and whatever else.
Yes, that's strong.
One go. Now I pull a limit. I will work with 4 clients at one time and that's it. That's my max.
Yes.
Because otherwise I can't fit the holiday in. Now I do it again, just not that we're going to spend the entire episode talking about Dan Priestley. And obviously I'm going to have to put a link into his books now.
Oh, he's very good though.
I know he is. That's not the point.
I have silent stalked every single one of his podcasts down to 2016 twice.
Well,
Dan, if you're listening.
I did his program twice. So
did you?
Yeah. So that's how I ended up writing Property for the Next Generation. That was my first KPI book. And The Wealthy Retirement was my second go round KPI book. Where was I going with Dan Priestley? Something about
1 to 2 a month. 20 for 2 years. Might as well retire. Did his program.
I don't know. I was going to mention him for something and it'll come back again anyway. But this whole idea of
lifestyle versus empire, maybe.
He's done lifestyle versus empire, and as you said, this idea that you can grow your business so big, but once you grow it to a certain size, to actually take on that next team member, you actually have to take on more than one team member, which means a whole new department, which is a whole nother stream of income. And that's certainly something that I talk to my clients about, is you can grow your main business with a new member, but that new member is going to take more of your time than if you make that new member of your business another property. So instead of putting that money into an employee, you put that money into a property, which I can help you set up the system, and it'll take you half a day a month. And so looking at how I run my business, you're looking at the systems, but your systems enable you to do more. So when you work out how to do it better, instead of doing one of them, your system shows you how you can do them 2 at a time or 3 at a time.
Yes.
Whereas when I look at it, the other side of it, and I work out how I can improve it, I
Yeah.
just take the time off.
Go diving.
Yeah, and I just have
By
another
the,
holiday.
by the way, guys, Vicky and I really enjoy each other's company. So every now and again, we get a text or an email saying, "I'm in South Africa. I'm in, I'm diving or whatever." Now, to be fair, look at this lifestyle empire thing. I would still place myself in lifestyle. I live half the
Yeah,
time in Barcelona. I have a home there and a home in Britain. And I'm talking to you right now, as you know, from Brooklyn.
yeah.
Um, because my sister, who lives in a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn, her and her husband are in my place in Barcelona. Funnily enough, they didn't choose Britain; they chose the flat beside the Med. I don't understand why.
Don't understand
I've
why.
been I've been here for this is my last week. I'm so sad.
Oh,
And I've done a whole summer of funk, soul, hip hop. I've gone to loads of amazing Gladys Knight in the Pips, George
oh,
Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic. Oh my gosh, Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago, Elvis
oh
Costello,
no.
Daryl Oates. Oh my lord, oh my lord. I've got Erica Badu coming up, Janet Jackson. I mean, the list, and Missy Elliott. This voice is from Sting
Screaming.
at the top of my head a week ago from Missy Elliott. And like gone to the hip hop jewelry museum and up hip hop tours in Harlem and all sorts, right? So I'm still a lifestyle person, but I still
Yes,
like to scale. And what I've learned, that interesting thing of assets, assets paying income. So
yes.
first off, we've got assets paying income from property. Delicious. And I had 3.5 years off, and thank goodness for property, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to lie on the sofa and recover and get better or pay for medical bills. And then for me, when I'm doing the teaching now, though I adore teaching people, we put everything digital so that it meant that we could reach more people at a lower cost than if they were paying me personally. And I was separated from the delivery moment. So, but of course,
Because you get your time back and the flexibility and
yes. And I still do coaching calls with people, and I still do, I go in a number of times a week and answer every single question. So, I'm not shirking. I never would, but it means I can give incredibly deep information, which is effectively the same information on digital, but it's incredibly deep. And I don't want this to turn to an advert, but I take pride in good work. So and it means for the other person, they can receive the information at the appropriate time. So what you've got is
yes,
an asset, and it means that you can give of your best but once, and
yes,
multiple people can benefit from it. So
totally.
I see that as a gorgeous asset, and they don't need to pay the high price that they would have to pay. They can pay a much lower price. Everybody's winning. So
But
it's
it's another business and another
yes,
stream of income coming in,
and
which
another
then,
asset
yeah. So
paying
then,
income.
first of all, you've taken the properties, you've
Yes.
systemized them, you've learned
Yeah.
how to do it well.
Yeah.
And that's made managing because you do have your own personal portfolio, that's
Yes.
managing your own portfolio well. You've
Yes.
then taken the knowledge that you've gained from that and turned it into your teaching materials.
Yeah.
And that then has, in a sense, become a second business. I know it's all one really, but become a second business, a second stream of income within the whole thing. Again,
Yes.
it's systematized because
Yes.
putting it online has systematized it. So again, it takes very little of your time, and therefore you can be
Rocking out to
over the
Missy
top.
Elliott.
Yeah, rocking out to Mrs. Elliot. So
Yes.
I think if we were to measure over the years, and I am extremely competitive, but I am quite happy
Cool.
to, I'm quite happy to, do you know what? The thing is, when I'm competitive, I look at who I'm about to race. Now,
Yes.
if I was going to run a race, I wouldn't bother with Mo Farah and Usain Bolt, right? I would look at someone probably with a slightly sprained ankle and then go for it. Because actually, I don't care about whether it's a fair race or not. If I'm in the competitive mode, I
Yeah.
want to win. And
Yes.
it's not that I will win by any means, and it's not that I will win by cheating. It's just I will pick my races to make sure that if I'm going to put my effort into a race, I'm going to bloody win it. So the
Yes.
race between you and me is not a race because I know I'm not going to win it, but I'm just going to put
Ah,
it out like a race. No, it
it,
won't.
it depends what the criteria is,
Well,
doesn't it?
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So it does depend on the criteria. So you can spin back a criteria on this. But if we're going forward, you started later than I am. I
Yeah.
think that you're probably going to have a bigger portfolio that's worth more than I have. You've definitely done more deals than I have. And because I've probably done just under half of what you've
That's
produce.
still extremely strong, isn't it? Let's be
Well,
fair.
given how many holidays I've had as
And
well. Yes,
that's what it's all
I
about. We're
know.
only here for a short time.
Yeah, well,
So,
that is the thing. That is the big thing for me, is going right back to what is the purpose. And so we sort of started with that, didn't we? With,
yep.
you know, I suppose I would always ask you why, not one, I would always ask a client or anyone, why do you want to invest in property? And then
Yes.
getting to the root of that, actually, usually what it splits down into, it's either time or money.
Yep.
Someone either wants more time because maybe they're in the corporate job, which is sort of your story. They want more time, or they want more money. And mine was the more money because I'd already been made redundant. So I had all the time in the world. But what I was never going to do was allow myself to be in the position where somebody else could make me redundant again. That
Yes.
financial security was my driver. You wanted the time. That doesn't mean to say that I didn't want time and you didn't want money as well, but there was a bigger driver there. And it nearly always falls down into one of those two. Then when you've gone down into one of these two, yes, they can merge at the bottom and everything become equal, but you're driven by something, and then there's a whole load of other stuff that goes on around what skills you've got and where you're going to invest and what money you've got to put in into blah blah blah. But at the bottom of it, you go, right, what is the purpose of this business? And that's where
Yeah.
we started. Is it just to be a lifestyle? Is it to just give me more time? Is it just to give me more money? Or is it that I want to create it into a thing? And again, many of the business coaches that I've spoken to have talked about growing a business that you can sell because you've got a
Yeah.
name and a whole load of assets. And that's something that I've noticed with you with the Good Property Company. You've got a name that doesn't say Susannah on it,
Yeah.
that you've then got all of these assets underneath. And that is something that you can sell off. I did have a go at that in the early days. I called it the Property Sources and the Sources Apprentice. And I had all the branding for the businesses and all the website names back in the
And
day.
the, and there was mermaid branding as
Oh
well,
yeah, the
wasn't there?
mermaid
Yeah, I remember
originally.
that.
That was the blog.
Yes.
Yeah, the property
Yes.
mermaid. That was the whole diving and the blonde curly hair malarkey going on. But at the end of it, I thought, am I, and because I was never planning to do digital, because again, if you wind your way
Yes.
back 20 years, we wouldn't have been thinking about digital learning. I
Yes.
didn't ever in that first 10-year period think that I was going to create something that would become a product in its,
Yes.
or a business in its own right, that I could sell off. And now what I've got is the portfolios, and if you like, the portfolios of the business, the
Yes.
properties in the portfolio of the business, and they'll actually just move on to the family, and we're just
Yeah.
going to milk it for every piece of income that we can get, enjoy spending that, and
Yeah.
then you
And
know
live happy.
yeah, and live
Yes.
happy and live now and enjoy it and do it in the moment, because
Yes.
again, there's a bit of an age gap between us, but I
Not that much. I'm 50.
no, I think we did that game. We won't do that again in
Yes.
public. We don't
No.
need to. But there is a bit. But also I think what we can both agree is living now and
Yes.
seizing every moment, because uh again, like we've all had the health scares and everything else, and I used to talk, literally had created the talk at the end of 2019 that in 2020 I was going to start a series of talks called the mortality moment, and I always wanted a TEDx. Originally I wanted to be Dr. Vicky and I wanted a PhD, and I just couldn't stick it out in education long enough, so I wrote my own books and thought, I've written 5 now, that's
Yeah,
worth a
that was it.
PhD.
That's
I don't
strong.
care what you think, that's fine,
Yes.
I'm never going to be Dr. Vicky. And then I really wanted to do a TEDx talk, and I went and did an interview. I don't know if you've ever done one, and we clashed over a metaphor that I used very early on in my talk about how footballers and celebrities are paid so much money, but we don't value doctors and firemen and police. And this guy was a football fan, and all
Oops.
he wanted to talk about and justify was why footballers did get paid a lot of money. And then he didn't like the fact that I'd got a slide deck that I'd gone in a suit and I'd taken a professional PowerPoint, and that went against me, because what they want is people that rock up in jeans and a t-shirt and just talk, and
Yes.
it was their particular style, and I didn't get it, whatever.
Yeah.
So I never got to do that, and I just think now that it's
Yet.
a
Yet.
do you know what, I don't do you know there are some, like I say, it's the races, right? I'm over that
Not
now.
your race. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't need that anymore. I don't, yeah, it's not. I think it might have been a validation thing, because that's the other thing that can come into play here is ego. And
Oh, massively. The
let's
number
do
one
ego.
question we get asked is how many properties do you have?
Oh my God,
Um,
yes.
which is, turnover is ego, profit is king. And it doesn't really matter how many properties a person has. What matters is how much money they make and how much time they spend on it, really,
Well,
isn't
and the
it?
lifestyle that it gives them, because
Yes. And
you'll
is
know
it
as much
giving
as
them
I
what
do.
they want?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that there are some people you speak to and they only need 2 grand a month and they would live a
Yeah.
luxurious life. I've got one
Yeah.
client like that. He's got no mortgage, 2 grand a month, and he's absolutely rocking. I mean, that doesn't mean to say that he doesn't get more, but he only needs 2 grand a month to be living a
Yes.
rocking life, and he's got
Yes.
more than that anyway. So there's
But
that aspect of it.
ego comes in as well with those empire builders when they
Yes.
haven't when they're in that middle desert part when they haven't yet built the systems. And I've seen some people make really bad choices and go bust, and you think, really, and obviously I don't want to name them because
No,
good luck.
no, no.
You think, well, with reflection that probably was
That was
coming.
obvious. Yeah.
Yes, that was obvious. You're making too many mistakes too repeatedly. But I've also seen amazing people. I've seen people that you think you've got so many skills, but you just didn't plug the gap, go bust. And
Yeah.
it is that over trading, which you might also kind of call ego, when either you need to adjust as an entrepreneur into a different role, and that's a hard
Yes.
one because what got you here won't get you there,
Yeah.
or you need to take a step back and say, I need somebody else in. So I've had a real revelation between, and of course, what allows an entrepreneur in the early days to be successful is often being able to micromanage everything because
Yes.
and that was one of the skills in the early days that really helped me micromanage. I'm sure I made loads of mistakes, of course I did, but I borrowed millions, I've paid it all back. I had 2 times where I couldn't pay back on time, and I had conversations with the investors. Obviously they've all been paid back, and I had 2 times where I had a hashtag save Susie's bacon. Now, not from anything serious, but hashtag save Susie's bacon. I've got a cash flow problem. One was like a 5 grand cash flow problem, and one was a 20 grand cash flow problem. And that
Oh,
was when I was over trading. You remember from the
yeah.
conversation at the beginning. And that was with very close property friends going, hashtag save Susie's bacon. I've got a 5 grand or a 20 grand problem. Is there any chance you could lend me some money for a very short period of time? And because I had such good relationship. And to be fair, I have been that investor 3 times for somebody else in the
Yes.
last year.
Yeah.
Hashtag save X's bacon. Yeah, sure. Do you need 30, 40? What do you need? Okay, it'll be over tonight. Right, job done. So that fluidity does happen with people. Obviously all with legal documentation. But I do think that ego and kind of empire building go together. Now I love these people who are just like, I'm going to run for for Mars. But I look at them and go, oh, that's a bit tiring. I think
Yes.
I'll just go down to the med.
Yes.
Like the guy, I still want my 6-week holidays, and like I've been here for 3 months, and I want to travel around the world, and I want all the other things that property can bring, because I still don't want property crushing me. I want to be on a bed of property, or on a platform of property where
Yes.
it's my life. And I think part of that came in, again, if we're talking between kind of lifestyle to empire builder. I mentored somebody very early, and I won't name the person. They've written books. They're an amazing human being, and I loved. If they're listening, hello, you know who you are. They're amazing human being, treated their staff really well, but had built a gilded cage around themselves. They couldn't ever not be there. Because they hadn't yet moved from that an early stage where you kind of micromanage attention to
Everything.
detail in order to make it good, to that later stage where you're now going to have formal departments. And part of my working with them was that professionalizing. This was
Yeah.
years ago, years
Delegation,
ago. Trust. Yes. And
It's a
so
big leap.
I've made that initial step from everything being in house. I had 2.5 people running my lettings. I'd ended up employing 16 people at one point. Everything in house, to outsourcing more and more functions. Now you'll still get a crappy person, a crappy company, and you just have to be like, oh, like for example, when we did outsource the properties, we tried 5 letting agents. And they ranged from A, B, C, D, and E in terms of scoring. So, of course, we went with the A's. They're amazing. JBS from Bristol. Shout out to Jack and Angeliki and Dan. And and they just do an amazing job. And you suddenly realize, gosh, I've got all my time back. They're highly professional. In many ways, they're better than me. And I don't now need to
Because they're
manage the 2.5 people.
specialists.
They're specialists.
Yeah.
So I've made that initial move from internal, generalists to external specialists, but I haven't made that, which is why I still contest I'm a lifestyle, not a empire
Right.
builder. I haven't made the next move up, which is internal specialists.
Yes.
So I think I'm pretty comfortable sitting with external specialists, but knowing I'm going to have to trial out multiples of the same type to get the right quality every time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that it again differs from us. I never brought everything in-house. I had a couple of goes early on, and I will use the word trying to employ people, because I would go through the job specs, I'd go through the interviews, I'd bring it down, and even went to the point of, right, so Susie, I'd like to offer you the job, but before you give in your notice, take a day's holiday, come and work with me for the day, or preferably take 2 days holiday if you're serious about it. Come and work with me for 2 days, see what it's like. And then people would come and work with me, and they either weren't what they'd seemed on paper, and they were very good at interviewing, but they didn't follow through on the real. And I think when you're in an early stage business, and I know all the startups will have experienced this, you need people who are self-motivated, who've got common sense. You don't want an employee, actually, because an employee needs to be told by a manager. And if I've got to tell you what to do every 5 minutes, I could be just doing it myself.
So that was probably maybe a difference. So two things. In the early days, I expected, because I think both of us, because we love coaching and helping and supporting people, we probably see the best in most people and think, oh, you can definitely grow. So I was always excited about people's potential. But over the years, I realized there's A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's in delivery. Not in judging the human being, but just in judging the delivery. And some of that's going to come out early, and okay, probation didn't work out, and some of that's going to come out later. And so, and then there's the whole boundary pushing, the parent, adult, child within employing somebody. Are we two adults working as equal adults, or do you want to take the child mode, which is forcing me to parent? Or let's be honest, do you, Susannah, want to take the parent mode because it feels really nice to really try and help somebody? Kiddo, you're not a parent, you're an adult, and you're employing this person, which kind of forces them into child mode. Yes. And I definitely had a moment or two of that. I've readjusted my position, and so I definitely now kind of take it with a pinch of salt, going, look, I'd love every single person to work out, but I know statistically X number are going to work out. So, I've had the lads that came in, looked at me forlornly after a couple of days, because I was like, are you okay? And he said, I thought by now I'd be doing what you're doing. And you just think, oh, my darling.
Oh, bless you.
My darling. I've been doing this for 15 years. You got to start by making the tea. And then I've also had, people like Arthur Dalamo, who's actually now a very dear friend, who's a multimillionaire and has currently bought himself a mansion and an estate, darling. And he came into me at 18. So I now kind of just realize there's I want the top 20%. Yeah. But interestingly, it's just been published, hasn't it? That Labour are looking at if an employer contacts an employee out of hours, then if they then take them to a tribunal, and you think, well, if you look at Cody Sanchez, she basically says, listen, I'm going to tell you the worst parts about this job, and there's no work-life balance. So if that's what you want, don't come work with me.
No.
And I do think that working for a driven entrepreneur coming in as an employee, you've got to really tell them, listen, this is what it's going to be like. Yes. We drive quite fast and hard. We want you to leave us within 5 years with a property portfolio. But in the meantime, we don't start at 9 and finish at 3. No. With 2 hours on the mobile phone.
Well, exactly. And in order to leave at 3, you have to be packing up at 2. None of that. You're not a British builder. You're here to work.
Whoa!
Well, it is true, having had a few Eastern Europeans.
Yes. So I think with the scaling, what I've certainly found the people side the most challenging. partly because I don't think entrepreneurs are natural bosses. We're not natural managers because we're already like halfway down the
Well,
motorway.
you're the ideas and going that fast. I know.
Yes. But one thing that I was strong at from the beginning, and I'm sure some of my former team are like, no, you weren't, but I'm sure I was relatively strong within the context, was documenting and systematizing and rinse and repeating. So,
Yeah,
for example, after I came back into work, after my time off, and before I employed anybody, I did 120 videos, which were the ops manual.
yeah.
Because I was, and I have to tell you that occasionally I forgot I was doing it for an internal public, and there were a couple of them in my pajamas. Whoops! And then because I'm an entrepreneur, I roll out of bed, I make a cup of tea, and I'm like, oh, let's do this.
Yeah,
So
I've got this idea.
yeah, and then you're like, oh, I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to apologize for this, but I'm not going to re-record it because we're
No.
moving on. So
Yeah.
so I do think that was maybe the difference, that
Yeah.
every single thing that happened, we documented, we processed, we rinsed and repeated, we improved the process on.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's my dad's influence.
Yeah. That
Professor of
probably.
maths. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say you've very definitely got that there as well, haven't you?
And then to a degree it can be handed over, because
Yes.
then you have a documented, templated process where people add in their personality and their ability. But I'm still looking for self-starters. But I've given them the bulk of it. So, for example, I started somebody yesterday in the business who's a tech a operations manual and reporting person, and I basically had a nice little chat with her at the beginning, and then we've got 21 videos, so she learns the company, which will take her about 2 days, and then she can meet the team. Then I'll meet her again on Wednesday. Great. So
Yeah.
I need to induct her for 3 days personally,
Yes. And
and if
that
she
that set of videos will then take on for the next person, the next person, the next person.
exactly, because she's got to know the business first. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the difference between us, in terms of, I was quite prepared to do a little bit of geeky internal work, partly for me, because I don't have a great memory, so I kind of need to tick everything off. When you're conveyancing, and every time something screws up, you add it into your process and add it into your system.
Mm.
Maybe that was the difference in the numbers, because I just got geeky. I don't
Yes. And
know.
I've never been 100%, do I say comfortable with the tech? I mean, I can do the videos and everything else, but
In your pajamas.
oh yeah. No, we've had that conversation already. Don't put the camera down.
Yeah.
But that whole idea of, I think you shifted over to Kajabi very quickly, and I keep
Yeah.
having a look at these things, and if I find it intuitive,
Yes.
then I'm happy to work with it. And it's the same
Yes.
thing with the phone. Nokia 6310 for a million years, an absolute million years. Everybody's on their Apples. I don't even know what number Apple they'd got up to. And I'm still hanging on to my Nokia 6310 till the family pushed me over the edge and I had to change. And Apple does things like, first of all, you used to have a button you pressed, and now you have a dot that you press, and then you don't, then you swipe, and then it looks at your face. I loathe it every time it changed. And I'll just, one quick story, this Mac that we're on now, I
Yes.
bought this 22 months ago.
Right.
That one there, I
Yeah.
was using up until 3 weeks ago, when it locked up one day and just went, right, that's it. I'm not playing anymore. I
Is
can't
that
get
when
it.
you changed over?
Yep.
What?
You want another thing here? Last Christmas, my present to me, a remarkable, so that I don't have to write on pieces of paper anymore. Still writing on pieces of paper.
We need to have some words.
I know. But you know
Because
what I
I bet,
need?
like me, you're an entrepreneur, so you're always driving forward.
Yeah.
So, and I used to have, oh my Lord, the amount of scraps of piece of
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
And then it's like, kid, you need to turn this into a system. So should we do tech briefly? I know this is going to
Go
make
on
you
then.
quiver. All right, we use Drive, and we've been using it since 2013. So we have
As in Google Drive.
Google Drive. Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
So
So
I
we have
use Dropbox. I'm very good with that.
Yep.
Yep.
So all our
Shared.
products, photographs, and creative stuff, videos, all the rest of it is in Dropbox, and all of our products are in Dropbox. And actually, we've got 2 Dropboxes plus hard drive backups just for
Yeah.
paranoia's
Oh
sake.
yes, definitely.
And then we use Drive for the day-to-day running of the business. So server, and then we've got folders from 2013, 2014, then divided into, and we recreate things the following year. So we never delete anything, but we pull things out into the
Yep.
following year, so that we've only got the current year's workings in that year. We
Yes.
use
No, I do all that in Dropbox, and then I
lovely.
back up at the end of each year into an external drive, and
Yep.
then there's only the last year's and this year's saved, and the
Yep.
year before last year's is just external, so you can plug it in if you need it.
There you go. Then Arthur Online for property management, even though I've got a letting agent, super lovely and easy. And there's plenty of other landlords tools, but I find that one really quite good. And then for the team, we use Slack with all the different channels. This morning I went walking beside the New York skyline, and I was answering messages on Slack while I was walking. It was really good. And then we'll use WhatsApp for emergencies.
Yeah.
Then we use LastPass for passwords.
Mm.
Webinar Jam for webinars. We
Well,
have
I cheat and use Zoom, so
I think Zoom is probably better. Webinar Jam's a bit glitchy. And
okay.
then 2 CRMs, Keep, because it's really stable, and then Go High Level just because it's got a nice function. And really, I'll probably get rid of one of them and probably keep the other.
Yeah, I've got Keep, and I think I'm just going to move from Keep to HubSpot and Kajabi because paid for it for a million years and then never used it.
Yeah.
And that's
Kajabi
what I think is I now
education.
see all of these payments coming out for pieces of software that I don't make
Yes.
use of. I mean, the
Which
same
is
with
the rental, which is ironic because as landlords, we're now being tenants of software.
we are,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely we are. You don't own it, do you?
How
You're
did
just
that
borrowing.
happen?
I know.
And then yes, Kajabi, Stripe, PayPal, and then obviously WooCommerce. And I could not fix any of them, but I do have tech people, but I sort of get enough to be. So it's not enormous, the tech stack, but really the asset in there is the.
Sorry, Susie, that's a lot of tech. That is a lot of tech. You probably don't see that. You watch this video back and you just see how many you just named.
And Zapier, of course.
Okay,
Which yes,
Well,
yeah.
I have a wonderful woman, and she's going to listen to this. Oh, yeah, Calendly. Yeah. I have a wonderful woman called Donna, who's my most amazing VA. She will be listening to this podcast, so I'm just going to give her a shout out. Yes, you are awesome. So she says things how like she's going to zap things. So she's obviously got Zapier and she zaps things. She has loads of tech in the background because she processes all of the podcasts and creates all the Dropbox. But my thing is the people. So I will tap into I want a person, and I'll work with you, and then you know how to use all those software. I want to be able to send you a message going, oh my God, I've had this idea, which is what I did to poor old Donna this morning. And not so much to the old, sorry, Donna. And she messaged me back going, we're speaking tomorrow, but maybe you can explain to me a bit more about this. Because I've just gone, oh my God, I've had this amazing idea. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to be for that, that, and that. And she's gone, yeah, let's talk about that tomorrow.
But isn't it exciting? So even though we've got the kind of assets, which in property is obviously the assets, and I suppose in education, I suppose you'd call it the database, and then you've got the
courses.
And the course, yes, of course, the courses, very much so. And then you've got the kind of things to make them go better. But the thing that drives me is the enjoyment of making something happen. And whilst employing people internally or externally can be deeply frustrating at times, and I'm sure we've both had, moments of frustration, I absolutely love it when you work with somebody who's really engaged and the two of you are on this project together and you can admire their abilities. I love that kind of human interaction where 2 + 2 = 5.
Yes.
I really hate the kind of interaction where 2 + 2 = 3. I'm bored by it beyond belief.
Yes. Or worst, 2 + 2 = 1 3/4.
Oh dear Lord! I used to own an office and I sold it a few years ago, but we had when somebody comes in bang on time and then they go make their breakfast for half an hour and you're just sitting there going, listen kid, you ain't paid to make your breakfast. So what they're doing, they're signaling from the get-go, you're not even going to get the basics from me, which is what we've agreed. So I certainly aren't going to perform up, I'm going to perform down. And you have to have these very boring conversations that says this is a business where you perform up, you don't perform down, so make your choice, because otherwise I'll be making mine. That's boring. So draining, draggy, boring. But I absolutely love it. It doesn't matter what level, when the person is just adds and you think, oh, this is a joy. We are creating something exciting and I love what you do. So that is a real driver in of itself within the business.
And I feel like that about, and this is a strange person to feel like this, but the person who does all of my branding for me, Simon, you'll probably know Simon. Simon Clements, and he just does all my logos, all my images. We've just got a whole load of new tiles to go at the end of all the reels on Instagram. And I just
Lovely.
tell him what I want, and he just gets it. And
Yeah.
very, very rarely do I have any suggestion, but I'm very visual, and I very rarely can come up with something that I want him to change on something he sends me.
Yep.
He invariably gets it first time. In fact, if you're listening to this, Simon, I think you should charge me less because I don't make you do all the alterations.
When we're sitting in that lifestyle business, we're talking about the joy of actually working in team, whether it's an external team or internal team. So, like I said, I may have slightly gone back to Daniel Priestley since 2016 or something, listened to every podcast twice. Now, what he's got is clearly a repertoire of stories which illustrate points, because it's a great way to illustrate a point. But every now and again, there's a little more depth given. And I do remember him talking about, if you're in a lifestyle business, you have to be killers. Now, that's quite a masculine word. And I'm like, oh, don't like that word. But I understand what he meant, which is you cannot be this lovey-dovey family where you accept low performance from those 12 people, because every single one of those up to 12 people, whether they're internal to your business or external contractors, they have to be top performers,
Yes.
or your business won't work.
Yeah.
And so that, because I think when we talk about lifestyle business, it feels very cuddly.
Yes.
And I want people in my business to really enjoy working in my business, but it can't
and be successful.
And be successful, but it can't be so cuddly that cuddly is to the detriment of performance.
Correct.
And that's been a real learn for me, because I probably started out a little bit too maternal, a little bit too cuddly, and not enough performance based. And so when I became more performance based, a couple of people in business were going, well, we don't like this because we liked it when you made our food at lunch and, checked in on us at the weekend if we were feeling a bit blue. And now you're all about performance. What's this? And you're like, well, yeah, this is the function of this business.
Yeah.
So I do think when we're looking at building a lifestyle business, we still need, I don't know if I'd use the more masculine word killers like Daniel did, but I understood his point. I still think we need to have people performing of the highest function, even if they're all outsourced. Like you said, your letting agent, your lawyers, etc., etc. You cannot absorb poor performance in any part of your business, especially if you want it to be lifestyle where you need to depend on somebody.
Yeah. And I think the thing for me is that I keep using this race analogy or competitiveness, in that I think what I've learned about me, and I don't know if you find this about you, but I'm fast.
Yes, me too.
I find that I'm thinking of things that really that thought needs to have come to me in a couple of months' time, occasionally in a year's time. And I have the thought almost too early that everybody else is not ready for it. Often I'm not ready for it. So the thoughts come before I'm quite ready for it. But that means that it just speeds me forward to catch up with the thought. I've got to hurry up and get there. And because I'm quick, poor Bob got the back end of it today, in that I was in that mode this morning. I'd like come in and I knew that I'd got this call, and I was like, and I've got to get this done, and I've got to get that done, I've got to get that done because I need to be ready for this. And I was in blah, blah, blah. And then Bob walked in, and I didn't speak to him like I would speak to Bob, the man I love, my husband. I went, blah, 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 blah. And then he went away. And then when he came back, I said, oh, sorry, I think what you need to do is, if you could just come here, if you can hear me on the keyboard and I'm going quite fast, wait till I acknowledge you, because otherwise you'll come out quickly without actually the cuddle you deserve around the outside. And that can apply as whether you're asking me a question which might include you on a cup of coffee or anything. But if I'm in that mode, I'm actually going so fast, and this is not an excuse, it's actually an awareness of me. So working with me, when anybody works with me, and I've said the same to Donna, you have to manage me. Because I'm having all these ideas, you need to tell me what is the thing that you want me to do for next week, because being very competitive, I won't want to not get that done. I will not want to fail. I will get that done. I will prioritize it. If you set me the objective, hold on, but I'm the boss and you're the VA, but I need you to do this to me to get the best out of me.
Yeah, agreed. So within that, I think there's two things, isn't there? There's that kind of interpersonal boundaries between what is business and what is personal. And I think in the early days, it's easy to merge. So I wanted more time with my family. And so Sundays were sacrosanct because but Saturdays they would often, because they were young kids, they were or young teenagers, they would often have, three friends in, or, so the whole house was, what's the word? Is it rumbustious? Boom, 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 boom.
Yes,
And I'd
yes.
be sat in the corner working away because really they didn't need mum. They needed mum to make sure they didn't,
Set fire.
die, set fire. And then they needed feeding, watering, and hands wiping because they were still quite young. They were
Yeah,
young
yeah.
enough. You still go, oh, you've got some mucky chocolate around your mouth. But then they just needed to know mum was in a corner. So I was very fortunate that I would actually invite kids in because then I could work. But then Sundays had to be the family time. And the
Yeah,
other thing I was able to do, which may be the same as you, was it just meant I could shift my hours around. So I'd work when they were asleep, or
yeah,
I'd work when they were at school. And
yeah.
so you could be present, but then switch off, switch on. So I think you've got to
Yes.
be very conscious of that because otherwise it can take over. And then
That's also a single parent thing because you
oh
can't do that
golly,
in a relationship. And
yes,
this is going to sound wrong. I feel sorry. I think I'm going to find another word for that in a minute. But I feel sorry for women or men, but I think women more, because if you want to get ahead in this and you've got children and a partner, while in some senses it's easier having the partner because theoretically there's somebody
oh
else
yeah,
to take half. When they take their half, you don't get all of your head back. You still only get 60 to
yes.
70% of your head back. So even though your other half, who is more than capable of not killing the children, as responsible for the
On
children,
an ongoing basis.
yeah, there's still a little piece of your head, just you'll
Yeah,
have pre-checked that they got everything, you'll have post-checked that they took everything, you'll still know where they are, you'll know when they should be back, you'll know whether they've fed, you'll know when you should have got a WhatsApp message. So a little piece of your head is still doing this. And you
yes,
don't have that thing that you and I had, which is that ability to go, right, kids, you're going to bed. Right, I'm now going to do another couple of hours of work, then I'm
yeah,
going to wind down, and then I'm going to go to bed, because you don't have
agree,
that flexibility, which I
agree.
think is a driver. And it'd be quite interesting to look at how many inverted commas
Successful women in
successful women.
property are single parents. Yes,
Yes, you don't have to be childless,
yeah,
but that total control over your environment
yes.
is interesting, isn't it?
I agree. And two things. I chose not to kind of date while my children were in their teenage years because I felt I didn't if what if the choice didn't work out well, I
Yeah,
didn't bring someone in to then have somebody leave their lives
yeah,
again.
understand
So
that.
that was a conscious choice. So I would say that was more not for my children, but I wanted to keep my
Out of
family
respect.
out of respect. Yes.
Yeah.
So um, therefore I had a single focus, if you like. But yeah, yesterday, because I'm in Brooklyn at the moment,
Yeah.
I had so much fun. I went to a hair shop. Now stick with me, even the men. I went to a hair shop and I discovered all these because I have very, very curly hair. So I went to an African American hair shop, like with the wigs and everything, and I'm like, right, I'm here. I'm going to buy what you tell me to buy within reason. Talk to me.
Yes.
And she took one look at, and I went, I'm not presenting how I want to present. And she took one look at me and she went, have the kids now left home? And I thought I was like, oh, you recognize me, because obviously, so that was just because you basically switch off part of your life and then you can be
Yes.
very single minded. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. That fluidity of life. So, yes, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because you don't have this additional, very important and lovely relationship where you've got to feed and got to give time to. Therefore,
Yes.
and what I see in the early days of property, not later on when the assets are built, but in the early days, the key driver of success is how much time does somebody put in. Later on, it
The
isn't about
systems take
time.
over. Yeah.
The systems take over, but in the early days, how quickly do you get to where you want to get to is absolutely all about time and focus and efficiency. So efficient use of time. Yeah. So
Be
probably it was
interesting
a
to see.
superpower.
Yeah, if we go back to the whole point right at the beginning of the empire and the lifestyle, I've always found that I think that's where I was going with that point earlier on, is that other people, when they use the term lifestyle business, it's in inverted commas, and it's got that, yeah, you're just a lifestyle business, like it puts you down. And I'm just thinking, yeah, but actually I've got a great lifestyle, so I really don't care what you think. So there's that side of it. But the other bit of it is, I wonder whether you can think of, show me with a finger, how many women empire builders that have failed, or how many property women have failed. Can you name a property woman that's failed?
I don't want to name her publicly
Well, not
because she
name,
gets
no,
a lot
no,
of hate.
no. But you
And
can
I don't
think of
like when
one?
anyone hates on somebody.
No,
Yes,
no, but
one,
you can think of one.
But she's coming back now, so
Okay, so that's interesting,
re
because I can't think
one.
of. Okay, we'll have to go offline to see if I've clocked
Yes,
a few.
sure. Yes.
Yeah.
But no, the larger failures, whether they're public or private, tend to typically be men. So I think roughly our industry breaks down around 65% men and around 35% women. But they kind of empire builders who didn't quite get across the desert to actually building a formal empire, and then unfortunately crash and burn. And you think all that effort, or of course, all the money and all the money that other people have lost as well. The whole thing is tragic and awful. All that effort, they almost always are guys, and it's just they're not shutting the door. It goes back to a little bit of ego. It also goes back to amazing male masculine bravado, which I really admire in many, many ways. Like a friend of mine in property at the beginning of COVID was like, Suze, now is the time. Go back, because I've paid back all my investors. I own my properties myself, and go back to fundraising, and you now should be buying commercial buildings and blocks of flats in main city centre locations. We had a long talk about it. This guy's an empire builder. And I was so tempted, because of course I have the skills to do that. And then I was like, hang on, what does property mean for me? What do I want it to do? I want it to give me my life. Now, my son, who when your children are in their 20s, they don't always think that mother knows best, do they? They're sort of like, I can do it myself and all the rest. And so my son, who occasionally thinks that I remember being the same, so I can't critique him. So, however, as much as he's like, oh, Mum, you drive me nuts sometimes, he does live in the next street to me in Barcelona, and which I adore, right? So I would rather be able to be with him through the trials and tribulations of, I mean, I remember feeling very clumsy in my 20s. You're not fully formed. You don't quite know who you are yet. Maybe some people do, but I certainly didn't. You're making a few mistakes. Everything is very acute. You feel it so strongly. I'm really glad that I'm in the next street and he can come round and have a cup of tea and a hug as and when as he wants. In the difficult moments for him, he's round every day or every second day for a cup of tea and a bit of a hug. And because that's what I want. And I'm very glad I didn't do the massive empire building.
Yeah.
Because
life would be very different.
Yes. And if I had borrowed literally tens and tens of millions of pounds to buy these buildings, which of course in 2021 got cleared out and commercial values dropped and all the rest of it. Then when I had my medical stuff, where would I have been?
Absolutely.
No, thanks.
That's where my head was going, was goodness, if you'd been an empire, would you have made it through?
No. If I had been an empire builder and I got hit by the black swan of cancers, guys, I got diagnosed with 4 cancers in 3 years, because why would a person do anything by halves during a pandemic? Darling, I'm fine now, NED, but obviously it wasn't the most fun time in my life. That would have been my black swan. But what was interesting, having outsourced to high quality people and not accepted low quality people, we got through it, and I paid 150 grand of my own medical bills because the care I received wasn't it wouldn't have allowed me to survive. So
but you had the team and the systems in place to ride whatever comes.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be a great segue into the next podcast, because we'll talk about predicting the future, because you couldn't predict your future, as you mentioned then. I said I was going to talk about mortality moments, and then COVID hit. The last thing anybody wanted me to do is start giving talks on mortality moments when the whole world was scared of dying. So that work crashed. So we have all of these ups and downs where you do things. But I think that there's another whole conversation we can have here about predicting future. And you'll just have to sign up and subscribe, and then you'll hear me and Susie talk about it.
Great.
I want to be very conscious of your time. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. I think that we've gone through a lot here, and I think
for nattering
no, we've done
about subjects that fascinate us.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But I think hopefully that's of interest to people. But I
Yes,
think if you were listening to this to get three things out of it, I think understanding, first of all, why you're investing in property is one thing, how big a business you want to build, and being aware of that journey, that you don't just go from buying a couple of houses to then being these multi-million-pound developers. There is a process to go through that. And there is, I think probably the big thing for me is there's nothing wrong with being a lifestyle. There are still various styles of lifestyle. You can be a fast lifestyle like Susie, or you can be a wet focused lifestyle like me, either watering tomatoes or swimming or whatever else. So you can be all sorts of lifestyle businesses, but you can create a system. First of all, you pick your investment technique and a system that supports it, that allows you, as we have both said, to sit on top of the platform of property, that you work on your business, you're not in your business, you're not crushed by it. And I think that would be a really key learning for you to take from this. So Susie, thank you so much.
Good fun, isn't it? I do think it's about having a business that feeds your soul without emotionally relying on it. So it still lifts you up and doesn't drag you down, and then obviously gives you all the support you and your family need. That's the plan, isn't it? Like that's a proper lifestyle business.
That's very definitely it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank you all
me.
for thank you. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that Susie and I have been able to put some whoosh into your life. Please make sure you subscribe, and thank you very much for listening, as always, to A Wealthy Life. Wow, so that was a really fascinating conversation with Susie. I hope you followed along there through all of the weaves of our conversation. But I'd really like you to get out of this, as I sort of said in the summary, that investing in property is a personal affair. It comes from why you want to invest. It's built on your resources, your knowledge, your skill, your time, your money. And at the end of it, the most important thing is that this helps you to have the life that you want, your lifestyle, your choice of a wealthy life. And I suppose what I would say to you over and above all of this, if you don't really have even the vaguest idea of what you want to get out of it, it's going to be very hard to plot that route to get you there. So question yourself, what is it that you want to get out of investing in property? That's the key question to have here. And then everything else will start to come for you. And if the answer is that you want to have one of these big businesses, and that is what you want, take on the business mentoring that is going to support you through that process, that's going to help you build the systems in place, that's going to take you through that tricky period of where you have to take on more staff than you've got income, and you need to be strong there. That's usually where people go for legitimate business insuring investment at this point to grow to that next level. And I'm not talking about the investment to joint venture to buy another property. I mean investment in the business. This is usually where you're growing the business with business partners that are investing in the business to grow the business, not to grow a portfolio. So make sure, please, as I've said, that you subscribe, that you follow. If you love these, please share them with people, share them on your social media, leave us a review. These reviews are so important to get in the rankings, and getting in the rankings mean that more people get to listen to this. So I appreciate your support as always. Thank you very much for listening again. My name's Vicky Boucher.